And let me start by asking this question and playfully, let's think this through a little bit. Does Matthew have a Jewish emphasis? Now, we've said already that there is a Jewish focus in this book, but there's also at times some prompting, some allusion to the fact that the mission is going to expand beyond the Jewish people. So, the New Testament scholar Craig Blomberg would say this about Matthew. He says, Matthew, his gospel, is perhaps the most Jewish of all the gospels, and yet at key places this book, also foreshadows the Gentile mission as clearly as any of the other three, Luke, John, and then also Mark. So let's talk about the Jewish emphasis in this book and then take a look as well at this foreshadowing of this Gentile mission. Now, in terms of the Jewish emphasis, we've seen already those Old Testament quotations in Matthew 2. That goes all the way throughout the book. There's more quotations here in Matthew than there are in the other Gospels. And also there's that genealogy piece right off the bat that links to the Old Testament. But there's also specific places, even in the words of Jesus, where the mission of the disciples is to focus on the Jews. So, Matthew 10, for instance, Jesus says, "Go nowhere among the Gentiles and enter no town of the Samaritans, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." So as Jesus sends out his disciples, they're to focus on the Jews. Jesus also, later in Matthew 15, speaks to a Canaanite woman in the region of Tyre. Jesus says to her, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." Now, eventually Jesus does answer her request, but it's curious that Jesus would make this statement where he's focusing on Israel. So there is a Jewish emphasis, but there's also this foreshadowing of the Gentile mission. In Matthew 8, verse 11, for instance, Jesus said, "Many will come from the east and the west and will take their place at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven." This reference to east and the west is a reference to the Gentiles outside of the nation of Israel. And this is something that's prophesied even in the book of Isaiah, that Gentiles will be brought in, and actually that the Jews will be a light to the Gentiles as they come in and are now brought into salvation. But probably the best foreshadowing example is at the beginning and the end of the book, the foreshadowing of the Gentile mission, because you have the Magi from the east in Matthew 2, and then you also have the Great Commission at the end of the book, functioning, like I said, it's kind of bookends for this entire book. Now, the Magi from the east, this is incredibly curious because you have these pagan stargazers who are coming and actually crowning Jesus with these jewels, bowing before him, giving him these gifts. And this is the most un-Jewish part of the book of Matthew, because why would you have these Gentiles worshiping and submitting to Jesus and identifying him as the king, letting us know that, yeah, he's not just the king of the Jews, he's also the king of the Magi, and the Magi like Gentiles that come after them. So that's at the beginning of the book, but then at the end, this is after Jesus has been resurrected from the dead, there's a paradigm shift where Jesus, instead of sending his disciples out only to the nation of Israel, he says this. This is probably the most memorizable section in the book of Matthew. It's quoted all the time, and for good reason. Jesus says, "All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit." All nations, even the pagan nations. The Greek there is ethnos. So no more ethnocentric ministry just to Jews. We're going everywhere. We're going to all of the nations, baptizing them, making disciples of them in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, teaching them to observe all that I've commanded you. And behold, I am with you always to the end of the age. So yes, Matthew does have a Jewish focus in his writing, but throughout this book as well, there's this pointing forward to the Gentile mission, to the Gentiles, the ethnos, the pagans even from other countries, and to this mission to the lost people of the world. Go even make disciples of them, not just converts, but teach them everything that I've commanded you. And everyone anywhere in the world who puts their faith in this Jesus Christ can be saved from their sins. That's part of this mission. That's part of the message that comes out of the Gospel of Matthew.